Want to welcome everyone who's jumped on the phone call tonight. This is the first of, I would say, 6 to 7, maybe 8 of these that we'll have this season. I know we did a number of them last year with, I think, a great deal of success. It's a good way for us all to re-educate ourselves throughout the season. A good opportunity for us to share information with you guys, the latest information and interpretation, rule interpretations, feedback that Alex or I may receive from coaches, administrators, and our observations as we're out watching games throughout the season. So to start, guys, let's talk about the rules test. I think many of us have either started or completed the test already. I got together with a few guys last week, and I think it's a very fair test. I think one of the easier in recent years. But certainly with all of the recent rule changes for 2019, it's really imperative that we get in those books, and I encourage you guys to get together and study groups and take the test in groups. Remember that the test deadline is the 11th at 5 p.m., so we still have, obviously, some time left here, but let's not wait till last minute. Let's get it out of the way, make sure that we get that 85% passing grade. And remember that if you're going to work Division I or Division III games, you have to be NCAA approved, which means you have to pass that test. So let's really do our due diligence and work hard to make sure we pass that test and work hard to retain all that information. For umpires that are junior college only, all right, we will have a rules test out to you after this test period is closed, the NCAA test period. So there will be something that will be coming your way. Same thing, I encourage you guys to get together in groups, work on it. Let's face it, guys, we have to know the rules. And especially with these rule changes in 2019, there's a lot of pretty significant ones. We were on a call today with a bunch of coaches from all different levels across the board that we assign games to. And, we have to know these rules. We have to know them inside and out, and especially early in the season here where everybody's kind of getting used to these new rules, the interpretations, and how we're going to apply the rules. So let's, once again, just work real hard to make sure we retain this information and we carry that out to the field. Getting ready for the season, guys. I know a lot of us think about baseball 12 months out of the year. Some of us don't. For some guys, the NCAA clinic is kind of the kickoff, the start to the season. So we've passed that point. Now it's time for us to get out there and get ready. Let's make sure that we're trying to get out and do some cage work, see some pitches. I think it's vitally important that we get out there, and we don't want to make sure that first pitch that we've seen in the game this year was on the field. Let's get out there, contact any team that's close to you. Danny does a great job of putting cage work and scrimmage information up on our Facebook page. And for any of you umpires that have either a relationship with coaches who have contacted some of the teams, make sure once you get some of that information, you contact myself or Danny. We'll get that up on the Facebook page. And let's really get out there and work hard to be prepared. Indoor scrimmages, a lot of these teams now have facilities where they can run infields or maybe even a couple of outfielders too. So once again, let's not make that first call that you make this season the very first play you see on the field. Let's put the time and effort in to prepare with these teams. Once again, with the rules, guys, let's just work real hard to make sure we really have a good feel for these rules. And we'll talk about it tonight and probably throughout the season and reviewing the latest interpretations, but be prepared for that. For many of us, myself included, let's make sure that we're getting in the gym, we're getting prepared. We're prepared to run and move and get around in the field. Let's get our legs in shape. A lot of us get kind of sucked into bad weather and snow, and maybe we don't have the mindset of the baseball season starting, and then all of a sudden you're a day or two away from a game and you're scrambling to get ready. So let's get in the gym. Let's prepare our body, prepare our minds, and make sure that we're ready to get started once we get out there. Guys, I'll talk about uniforms a little bit, but let's make sure we go through at this point of the year. as we prepare for a season, get your uniforms together, make sure you have everything, make sure you have new hats, make sure things fit. We want to make sure that we look like umpires, we fit the role out there, and we look professional, okay? So that's really what we have to do, guys. We have to be prepared when we go out there for the first time. These teams are out there practicing. They're putting their time and effort in, a few weeks before the season. So our level of commitment should match or even be beyond what those players are doing. We want to make sure that we look like we've already called 10 to 15 games before the season even starts. I'm going to send this over to Alex. Alex is going to talk a little bit about policies and procedures for the upcoming season.
Thanks, Chris. Great day, guys. New England Patriots, Super Bowl champions again. Danny's looking at me cringing. Okay, quickly. Most of the stuff I'm going to go through tonight, guys, is not really anything new. Obviously, we have some guys on the call who may not have worked a ton in the past or haven't worked at all. I know we did go through some of this with you guys on the new member call, but I will very quickly run through it. If you need to communicate with Chris or I regarding anything, Division I all the way down to junior college, any geographic location, just make sure you're addressing all of your emails to both of us. And we do have a little bit of different syntax in our emails. Chris is C. Marshall, and I'm Alex. Both are at umpires.org. So if you guys can please do that, that'll help us get through things, schedule changes, and all that kind of stuff, anything that we need to attend to, because there's times I'm on the field, there's times Chris is busy. So it's helpful if both of us are involved in any kind of communication. And if at all possible, please, text messaging, Facebook messaging, all these different types of communications that have all popped up here in the last few years, don't send us anything important in those medias. They get lost. We don't get them. We forget about them. So email's the best. Obviously, there's going to be times you have to pick up the phone. If you got to do that, certainly do it. And Chris will go through some of the instances where we definitely need a phone call later on in the call here. As most of you guys know at this point, all of our assignments are made in the Mid-Atlantic Officials Arbiter system. We do share an Arbiter system with the MAC guys, and that's group 101-214. We want to make sure that you guys have everything updated, your name, your address, your cell phone number, your email address. Just make sure that's all current. You do have an option in the system to put travel limits up. We'd appreciate if you just set it all to $9.99. That's obviously the highest it can go, and that'll just make life a lot easier for all of us. We're not looking to assign people a million miles away from their house, but it's quite annoying when someone's travel limits are set to 25 and they don't realize it and they were open, but we weren't able to see that. So if you just go in, take a look at it, and set it to $9.99, that'll help Chris and I. In Arbiter, you also have the ability to put a headshot in. We've really been trying to get after this the last couple of years for guys to have good headshots. Coaches, partners, all kind of want to know who's showing up, who they're going to see. There are some instances where we don't know each other at this point. And then obviously there's every year with new coaches, there's opportunities for them to need to know who you are. So put a good headshot up. Don't have your family in there. Don't have an action shot. It doesn't have to be a suit and tie or anything like that, but just a good headshot. For the most part, all of our assignments are completed. You guys know that. That's been for some time now. And so obviously add-ons, rainouts, makeups, all that good stuff. So keep your availability up to date for us. Notify us. The crew chiefs on the games, please notify us of any changes. If you're in the middle of a weekend series, maybe it's not the hugest deal if your whole crew is on board, but in terms of if you get a call the night before that something's moved from 3 to 4, just let us know. Just shoot us an email. We may not even change it in Arbiter if it's that close, but we just want to make sure that the lines of communication are open. One thing that every year seems to come up that gets a little confusing is games will disappear off of your Arbiter schedule 21 days after they've happened. That doesn't mean you're not going to get paid. It doesn't mean they never existed. It's just a way of Arbiter working with our group specifically because we have so many games flowing through there, and they're trying to cut down on some server space. So that's one thing that they do, and we just have to be prepared for it. Obviously, we want you to know all of your games in the past, so just print it out as it happens, print it out at the beginning, make your edits, download it into Excel, whatever you might do. But don't be surprised if 21 days in the future, a game from 4 weeks ago is gone. So just in terms of registration, turnbacks, game fees, assigning fees, all those kind of things, just a quick review. There's no registration fees, and we don't have turnback fees or anything like that. Chris and I certainly understand that things come up. Life's important, work's important, family's important. Whatever it may be, if you've got something going on, let us know. We'll see what we can do. Please don't take advantage of it, but we try to be understanding of everything in terms of family and opportunities that you may have with your kids or whatever it may be. Today is February 4th, and there is maybe about 2 weeks before the season starts here. And I know that many of you guys have some opportunities to work other levels of baseball for other assigners, and we certainly encourage you guys to work the highest level of baseball that you can. Unfortunately, what we can't have is a whole bunch of givebacks 24 hours before the weekend because everyone has, been assigned a D2 or a D3 game somewhere else because of late assigning or whatever it may be. So in order to combat that, what Chris and I have kind of put together and we've had in place for a while is from now until February 15th, if you make the decision that you would like to clear some of the junior college games off of your schedule so that you're open for assignment from other assigners, we're perfectly okay with that. There's no hard feelings, there's no penalties, there's no repercussions. So up until February 15th, send me an email that says, Alex, Chris, hey, I really want to be open to be assigned other levels for another assigner. Can you please remove me from X, Y, and Z? And that is totally fine. I understand that. We're on board with that. But once that February 15th deadline kind of comes and goes, then we would just ask that there's no givebacks for that reason. Moving on to assigning fees. As most of you guys know, no assigning fees for conference games. For non-conference games, we do charge 10% of the base fee. There's no assigning fees for canceled games, and you'll get an invoice from me via email on or around June 1st. The one slight change to that this year on assigning fees is there will be a floor of $50. For most of you guys, that doesn't really apply because you're over that number, but if you're a guy, if you guys are in a situation where you're under that number, you will get charged the $50. Obviously, if you're someone that works 2 or 3 games, we're not going to charge you the floor. So just want to let everybody know that. Again, I don't think that affects most of you. Please, when I do invoice assigning fees, I'm still chasing guys from the fall of 2018. I mean, it's February 4th, and I'm chasing guys from October, November. I chased spring guys well into the fall. I certainly don't want to have to add a finance charge or a late charge, but, when we get to a point that it gets a little ridiculous, I might have to. As far as game fees, we're still working through getting those updated for you guys in the system. I'm anticipating in the next week that that's all updated. And you'll have all the information regarding travel and all of that good stuff. Sorry, I'm trying to mute some lines of some guys that are letting some background noise in here. If you do, I will send out an email that says all of our game fees are updated. And if at that time you have any questions or think anything's in error, please certainly let me know via email, and I'll take a look at it and make sure everything's updated for you. The last thing I'll say about game fees is, as especially you guys in the New York, New Jersey area know we have quite a few schools that pay through UCU, and those schools are all listed on our website in the top right-hand corner of UnitedUmpires.org. You will see umpire resources, and then you can pull down the list of leagues, schools, everything that pays in that manner. All right, so that kind of takes us through some of our policies and procedures here. So I will turn it back over to Chris here.
Thanks, Alex. As Alex mentioned earlier, the contact information, email address is cmarshall@umpires.org for myself, for Alex at umpires.org. And guys, especially for 2019, we're lucky enough to have Brian DeBrouwer, who is our rules interpreter, and he does a great job answering questions himself or contacting Randy Bruns, NCAA Secretary Rules Editor, to get answers for you guys. His email is rules@umpires.org. So, once again, those are our contacts. Obviously, Danny Miller, dmiller@umpires.org, and Danny will talk a little bit later about social media and how you guys can get video to him throughout the season for us to put out. But basically, guys, that's all of us, and you can contact all of us really at any time, and we'll talk about some of the other areas in a second. But, guys, if you call us, please leave a message. Just calling us and hanging up or looking on our phone log and seeing a missed call or a message just saying, hey, Chris, can you call me back? That really doesn't help us all that much. I'm sure you guys could imagine once we get into the season here, our phones are kind of ringing off the hook, especially on weekends or when there's weather. Hopefully it's not as bad as last year. So just calling and not leaving a message or just saying, hey, can you call me back, especially when we have a whole slew of messages that we're trying to respond to, really doesn't help us. So if it's an important phone call, certainly leave a message, tell us exactly what the situation is, because if it's serious, we're going to want to address whatever the situation is right away. So please just do that for us. And like Alex said before, text messages, they start to stack up too. So email and phone calls are really the safest way to get a hold of us once we get rolling here throughout the season. Now, as far as contacting coordinators, I'm the primary contact for Division I and Region III junior college. If you don't get a hold of me and leave me a message, you can contact Alex as a secondary contact. For all other Division III and junior college games, Alex will be the primary contact with me as a secondary. So I think you guys can see here that you'll be able to contact and get a hold of one of the two of us at all times, especially as we get into weekends. Alex may be on the field. Fridays I may be driving because I live in Rochester and everything's 6 hours for me. So if ever you can't get a hold of one of us, just call the other, okay? And that relates directly to ejections, guys. So there's obviously some basic criteria that we have to follow here. And we've talked about this with the NCAA, and actually I think for the guys who are in Pittsburgh, they talked about it a little bit as well, and guys who are in the NEC meeting. We want to make sure if you guys have an ejection that you contact us right away. If it's in between games, contact us, call us, let us know what happened. You have an ejection, let us know if there's a suspension involved. But we need to know and have that information immediately. As you can imagine, we will be receiving phone calls either from coaches, ADs, or from the conference within, a matter of hours, sometimes minutes. So we want to be able to have an answer for them when they call. We never want to be blindsided by any situation that may happen on the field or have to contact you to get an answer to give to them. So once you guys have an ejection, once you get to your car after the game, locker room, whatever it may be, just call us and say, this is what happened. And in all likelihood, A lot of them are just going to be some basic ejections where you just have to follow up with your report. But with those serious ones that may involve some pretty big suspensions, then there's going to be a lot of work to do. So we want to start that whole process immediately. And then remember, guys, that you have 8 hours to submit your ejection suspension report. We use the NCAA arbiter form, which is pretty easy for you guys that have been through that process. And one thing I want you guys to just bear in mind here, a lot of these ejection reports are detailed. And we have to make sure that we get our facts straight and that we describe exactly what happened on that field. So if you guys are having trouble with writing them, want them to be proofread, contact myself or Alex. I can remember there was a case last year where I was up to 2 a.m, working with a crew because there was a bumping incident and a whole bunch of things involved. So we want to make sure that we get these reports correct. And the last thing we want to do is have them kick back from George, the NCAA, back to us. You guys have to go back and file the report again. So we will certainly walk you through the steps, help you write them. Make sure you proofread them. Make sure that the punctuation and the spelling is correct. Remember, these are legally binding documents here, so we have to make sure that they're accurate and we're following the procedures and it's accurate to what happened on the field. And guys, if you do something wrong, if you act inappropriately, if you use some language, you have to be truthful about it and put it in there. The last thing we want to do is have to call back an umpire and say, hey, wait a minute, did this happen? And for you to tell us that, yeah, it did. Let's just make sure that everything is in there right from the start. Any questions on that, guys? I think that's, for most of us, what we're used to. All right, I'm going to kick it over to Dan Miller. He's going to talk to you a little bit about social media.
Good evening, everybody. In addition to social media, I wanted to start off initially by bringing to all of your attention the Coach's Corner on our website at unitedumpires.org. The reality is all of us on this call are responsible for knowing as well as understanding all of the rule changes. So what we are trying to do is to make this as easy as it possibly can be for all of you. And what Chris and Alex have spoken to me about is to put out content, post content that will create uniformity. So at unitedumpires.org under Coach's Corner, not all of this is posted as yet, but some of the things that we will have on there. And really the whole purpose of putting it there is because in terms of consuming the content the NCAA puts out, sometimes that can be, I don't know what the proper word is. It's just more difficult than it probably should be. So some of the things that we will have on there, we will post all of the NCAA interpretations. We took that rules question and answer with Randy Bruns. That's now been translated into a format where you can just clearly read the questions, the answers, the interpretations. That will be on there. Yesterday at College of Charleston, we had a really cool situation with the baseball team where we had Brian DeBrouwer, John Porter, in addition to Jim Jackson. Many of you know Jim is an NCAA regional evaluator. We had all three of those guys make a presentation related to rules to the entire baseball team. That has been recorded, and the entire presentation will be posted, once again, right on Coach's Corner. In addition to that, this week at Elon, we're going to shoot 2 specific videos, which we hope will go a long way in terms of creating uniformity with all of you on the phone. One of the things that we're all going to have to be really, really consistent with is how we communicate the defensive conferences to both dugouts. We are going to shoot a video. Chris will be, I believe I'm correct in saying this, Chris will be the featured umpire, and we'll shoot it from a number of angles. So the goal is to create uniformity for you. This same video will be sent to the coaches, so they have an expectation of what this is going to look like. In addition to that, this week at Elon, we're going to be shooting a video related to the pitchers regulations. And one final thing that I haven't posted yet, but it has been recorded at the NCAA meeting, I believe it was in Pittsburgh. We had Chris along with Randy Bruns and John Porter. And what we initially had thought this was going to be was a question and answer with these three guys. The way it evolved, really it evolved organically, was they had a conversation regarding, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 of the big rule changes. So we will post those as separate files as well. So once again, just to underscore, UnitedUmpires.org, Coach's Corner will be like a one-stop shopping for all of these rule changes. And finally, I just have a minute here, so I don't want to take up all of your time. I just want to reiterate the different social media platforms, and I want to highlight Mid-Atlantic Collegiate Umpires platforms. As all of you know, we're basically the same company. We're certainly sister companies. Mid-Atlantic on Facebook is at Mid-Atlantic Officials. Their Twitter feed is at Mid-Atlantic Umps. And many of you know our UCU Facebook is United Collegiate Umpires. On Twitter, we are at United Umpires. The main goal for all of these platforms is we want to reach as many current umpires that are out there. More important probably than that is we need to reach future umpires. And, of course, it's always good to reach administrators. So I would just ask all of you and encourage you to engage with us on social media if you're inclined to be on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Anything you can do. I'm certainly not up to date and as knowledgeable about all of the algorithms as I probably would like to be, but I know all of that stuff counts. Last thing. Last year we instituted, or I guess I should say I solicited your help in finding some video mechanics plays, and I appreciate everybody that responded. I would once again request the same thing, understanding that the reality is we don't work ACC games or SEC games. Finding that video content would be super easy. So same as last year, if you have a play, something that's an interesting play, a naughty play, a mechanic that's executed well, whatever it might be, just shoot me an email at dmiller@umpires.org. Put in the subject video mechanics or something that draws my attention to it, and I will take a look at it. I will try to access the video, and hopefully it ends up on one of our video mechanic grams. That's all I got for my segment, Chris, and I appreciate all of you being on the call.
Thanks, Danny. And guys, you guys have all seen what a great job Danny does, all the information he puts out, obviously on the Facebook page, but what we get up on the website. And he works some nights this guy doesn't sleep. I'm not sure he'll sleep for the next few months. So when it comes to videos, guys, send whatever you can in, not only for mechanics grams and highlighting plays, but we really want to highlight our umpires and highlight the good job that you guys are doing out there. And, you know, I know in years past, whenever I was lucky enough to find a clip of myself, you know, when you do something that's good and you're successful at it, you want to be rewarded and you're proud of yourself. So, you know, we certainly want to highlight all the good things you guys are doing. So if you guys can find some stuff and you're in it and we can put it up there, then that's certainly something we want to do. I want to briefly talk about uniforms, guys, and really nothing's changed. You know that our official suppliers, Stripes and Strikes, the website, www.stripesandstrikes.com. Basically, guys, it's the same uniforms we've been wearing in the past, the black, either Majestic or Smitty shirts with the gray panels down the side with the alternate sky blue shirt with the black panels. Nothing has changed there. We wear those all the time. As far as the jackets go, the Majestic or the Smitty convertible jackets, both acceptable. That's our go-to main jacket. We have the cold weather UCU jacket once I believe it's the 3-2 brand with the gray panels up at top. You're certainly welcome if any of you guys have a plate coat to wear on the plate. We also have the new plate jacket that some of you guys may have seen Keith Seghetti show in Pittsburgh. That's a nice item that they've just come up with recently. Certainly a good product for some of the bad weather we have, and we're going to endure through the early parts of the season. And one other new item that you guys may not be aware of that Keith presented to us in Pittsburgh is the Adams convertible pullover. I think a lot of us have worn this. Smitty seems a little bit light compared to the Majestic, which obviously a lot of us try to find. They just don't make them anymore. The Adams convertible jacket is a nice jacket. It's a good alternative. I found it to be a little bit heavier even than the Majestic, and they do run big. So you would have to order a size smaller than you normally would wear. But certainly a good option. Keith has those in stock in very sharp-looking convertible jackets. So really the only other thing as far as uniforms go, guys, are just the hats. If you're working a Division I conference game, you will wear the conference hat that you're working in. All other games, junior college, Division III, non-conference, just the UCU hat. So really no changes on uniforms. Yes, go ahead.
It's Alex. Let me just chime in
Yes.
for a second there. Guys,
Yep.
especially for you guys moving towards the South, Philadelphia, South Jersey, and below, there's opportunities where you guys may be cross-assigned, and what I mean by that is you'll be assigned possibly in the NJAC, Region 19, the Atlantic East, which are all UCU hat. And there's some of you who will start to get assigned in the Capital Athletic Conference in Region 20 for John. Just make sure that you know whether you need to be wearing a MAC hat or a UCU hat. It's not the hugest deal if we make a mistake and we cross over, but what we don't want to happen is for one guy to be wearing a MAC hat and one guy to be wearing a UCU hat. So certainly, John's JUCO is the Maryland JUCO, Region 20 and the Capital Athletic, and then our stuff is kind of everything else. So please just be aware of that. If you have a question, first ask your partner. If you need to shoot me an email, certainly you can do that. But just be aware of that, especially for you guys in that Philly, northern Maryland, Delaware area where a lot of you guys are being assigned in both places for both organizations. That's it, Chris.
Yep. Thanks, Alex. I would have forgotten that. Thanks. Next, guys, Brian DeBrower is going to talk to us about some rule situations and handling situations. Brian?
So we don't want to restate what you've already heard just about all the rules changes, but what we want to do is try to give some preventative interpretations, for lack of a better term, or just points of emphasis in terms of how we're going to practically deal with a situation. So starting off with intentional walks, we know now that the defensive team can simply signal for an intentional walk. Once you notice the potential for this situation, so the catcher maybe taking an extended look at the dugout or the coach kind of walking out to the top step, trying to get your attention, let's call time as quickly as possible just so we don't have any advancement by the offensive team while this is going on. And at that point, hold up four fingers and verbally ask the coach if it's in his intention to walk the hitter, try to get him to hold up four fingers in return so there's no confusion about that. The other piece of this rule is that the intentional walk signal now counts as a play or attempted play, and that negates any opportunity for appeal after that walk has been allowed. Next to the blocking and obstruction rule, we know that now the player cannot block the plate or base, any base, until he's in possession of the ball, unless the throw takes that player into the pathway. So the key to us officiating this well is having an awareness of what that fielder is doing throughout the development of the play. And as we've taught at our clinics for quite a while now, the wedge theory for taking tag plays is very helpful because we place a premium on focusing on what the fielding player is doing prior to the arrival of the ball, so not paying attention to the flight of the ball so much as how the fielder is going to react to that ball. And that should give us an idea of where the fielder is positioned even prior to the ball being released, and then once the ball is released, how they react. On these plays that might occur on a steal at second base or pickoff or back pick at second base, there's the chance that this is going to develop behind our umpire, coming from the deep B or C position. We envision that this is going to create many of the issues in terms of that umpire being able to see what the fielder was doing prior to the ball arriving, because if you're turning with the ball, it's difficult to figure out whether he was blocking the pathway prior to the ball arriving. So that's a case where now, because our umpire might not have viewed a critical elements of the play, and other umpires on the field that had that fielder's actions in their frame of vision throughout the development might have information that we could provide in a crew consultation. So certainly with the many elements that we're going to have to officiate on these collision plays, if you think you missed a certain element of this play, don't hesitate to initiate a crew consultation and get it right. Moving to offensive and defensive conferences, there's a premium now placed on downtime umpiring. In the past, the catcher going out to the mound didn't really require much attention from us. That couldn't be further from the truth now. We need to observe not only the fact that they're going to the mound, but when they leave and how many times it happens, in order to make sure that we stay on top of the visit situation for each team. And in order to do that, we're encouraging not just the plate umpire, but at least to start the season, the base umpires keep track of these visits with some sort of card. It doesn't take much to scratch out a little chart that will help you keep this stuff straight. There's also going to be a premium placed on communication here. So not just communication to the team that just took the conference, but to the other team as well, so they know what the situation is, and to our partners, making sure that we're all on the same page in terms of whether there was a visit or wasn't, and how many have been used. Speaking specifically about a situation where defensive players are conferencing on the pitcher's mound, it's important that we end this situation consistently across all games. So what I mean by that is when we're observing that the catcher has gone out to the mound, we need to look over at the defensive dugout and see if the coach has any intention of coming out on the field. And if he does, or we think he might, we should allow that to happen or ask if that's his intention. Because once we start to go out to the mound to break up that conference, that player conference has now ended. And any subsequent visit by the coach would constitute a new second coach visit. So in order to avoid that awareness of what the coach's intentions are will help get us out of a sticky situation there. We did get clarification on a couple things, specifically that after a home run, if the catcher, while the batter runner is rounding the bases, wants to take a quick trip out to the mound, chat with his pitcher to possibly bring him a new ball, he can do that as long as he's back to the plate area and doesn't delay the game at all. And I think we can interpret that as long as he returns to the plate area around the time the batter runner returns to the or is arriving at the plate, and he hasn't delayed the game. Of course, None of the rules have changed in terms of 2 visits from a coach in an inning still necessitates a pitching change. However, multiple visits, even more than 2, from a player in an inning does not necessitate that change. So, in theory, a team could use all 6 of its charged defensive conferences, not just in 1 half inning, but even to 1 hitter if they visited the pitcher 6 times. Let's talk a little bit about pitching positions. We know there's now 3 things we're looking at: the position of the chest and shoulders and the direction they're facing, the position of the pivot foot on the rubber, and the position of the free foot in relation to the rubber. This is one of those situations. It's very, it's difficult because everyone has a bit of a different perspective, and we don't want to be the guy that tells the pitcher he can't do what he's doing. However, if we do this early and often, and I mean early in terms of the season, but also the game, then it becomes less of a problem. So be proactive, watch pitchers as they're warming up. If you notice a problem, tell them what they can do to fix it, and hopefully they can do that, and we can move on. Hit by pitches. So obviously we've added the penalty that any time we deem that the hitter is going to stay in the box, he's penalized with a strike, no matter where the pitch is. I'm not going to rehash the rule here. I think we all know what it is. But what I do want to talk about just briefly is the situation with the possibility of a crew consultation. And again, the awareness of whether we've seen all the elements and made a judgment on them versus if we were screened out from seeing some critical element of this play. And as the plate umpire, we can all imagine if he sticks his elbow out and the catcher is not in our way at all and we see it, we should be able to call that without any issue. The problem arises when that catcher slides over on a pitch that's a little bit inside and takes away our ability to see what's going on with that hitter and his upper body or lower body for that matter. So in those cases, if there's a critical element that we might have missed, we have to be honest with ourselves about that. And there is the possibility for a crew consultation there. Now, because there's not any arguing allowed here, we're going to need to manage these situations with a bit of tact and grace. And if the coach starts to come out, we should certainly remind them that they're not supposed to argue. But if they have a brief question that can be asked and answered from a distance, then that's something that we can handle on a case-by-case basis. That's really all I have, guys. If there's any questions before the season or certainly once we start playing, please feel free to call, text, or email. We want everybody to be on the same page so that we can provide a consistent product. And if you have videos of plays that happen, please do what you can with the schools to get those and send them in to any one of us, and we'll make sure that those things are communicated across to all of our umpires. Appreciate your time, guys. Have a great season. See you down the road.
Thanks, Brian. Guys, great resource to use. Brian is excellent with the rules, and obviously if any of you guys have been to any of the camps that John or I run or Alex, we all put together, certainly a great asset to the organization and does a lot of good things for us. So if you guys have any questions, Brian is definitely a good avenue to go down to get some answers from. I want to touch on one of the things Brian just talked about in regards to that hit-by-pitch situation where now the bench or one of the coaches is starting to complain a bit. Guys, let's not be too jumpy and just think about now we have the opportunity to tell them that they can't argue. Let's remember they cannot come out to argue that play. But if they're asking legitimate questions about this, and we all know that a hit by pitch certainly over the past few years has been one of the most highly contested things on the baseball field that nobody's really been able to figure out. Hopefully the new rule will help us, but let's not be too quick just to put the hand up and tell them that they can't say anything. I'd like to compare it to years back when the rule came into play where assistant coaches weren't allowed to argue. And a lot of us went to the extreme of thinking that these base coaches or assistant coaches weren't allowed to say anything. And a lot of us, probably myself included, took that way too far. And the second they would question a play, a legitimate close play or anything, or have a legitimate question of us, we would just dismiss them, put our hand up, and not listen. So, guys, let's not treat this situation the way a lot of us did with the base coaches in the past. And let's think about calling balls and strikes and how coaches from time to time are going to ask you where the pitch is. Was that out? Was it up? Whatever it may be. And we answer them when they do it in a nice, respectful way. If they ask a simple question, we should give them the answer. Now, when it escalates, when they start to come out, then let's use our warning system that the NCAA has provided us with and make sure that we follow that procedure and warn, and if it goes too far, then we will eject. But just make sure that we are listening to these guys and not just too quick to dismiss their questions when they come. Well, guys, that's really all we have for tonight. Alex, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for taking some time with us for the first call of the season. Like I said, we're going to have a bunch more of these throughout the year as we get going. I'm really happy that you guys have taken the time to be with us, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you guys with some more information as the season goes by. Any questions or any issues throughout the season, make sure that you guys reach out to any of the four of us, and let's work hard, guys. Get prepared for the season, and best of luck, and we'll all talk soon. Good night, guys.